So a spirit guide is like a guidance counselor. It's someone in spirit form who helps us kind of figure it out, plan it out, and then once we're down here, they're that voice of conscience in our mind that's telling you, hey, you might want to be careful. She doesn't seem like someone you can trust. Or are you sure he really loves you? Because his behavior and his actions make it seem like he doesn't, and he doesn't seem to be genuine, or he doesn't seem to be authentic. So those thoughts, those conscious thoughts in our mind, don't always come from ourselves. They come from sometimes spirits, and in many cases and in most instances, they're coming from a guide, someone who's trying to help us work through a lot of the stuff that we are trying to figure out when we're down here. We wouldn't be able to come into this physical form without a spirit guide, because they are helping us to make sense of so much stuff that we are working through, and they also hold us accountable. It's kind of like a life coach. Consider them to be a life coach, except you're not checking in with them once a month or once a week. You're checking in with them every moment of every day of your entire life, and it's all telepathic, energetic communication between the both of us. So that is what a spirit guide is. It's just someone who's been with you from the beginning to the end. They helped you plan it all out. They're helping you to work through it all. And then they're helping you kind of reassess what you learned, what you didn't, what you got, what you didn't get, and what you need to add on to your load when you go into life on your next incarnation or your next lifetime. My guide's name is Kathleen. I met her when I was in my later teen years. And she communicates in various forms. She usually will communicate through the sound of my own voice. In other words, I will hear my own voice in my mind, but I know it's not my voice because I know what I sound like. But then there's this other version of my voice in my head that is softer, gentler, more, not so much authoritative, but almost a sense of like they know or they get it, but it's very calm, and they're not trying to like pressure me or push me into anything. They're trying to help me understand something or just grasp a piece of information. So my guide communicates with me in that form, but I've also had dreams with my guide where they've communicated information to me. Sometimes if I'm being really stubborn or hard-headed, my guide will come through someone else, which is kind of interesting and a little bit funny, because I'm like, oh wow, I really must have not been listening to her if she had to go through all that trouble to get me to understand this. So it depends on you. It depends on what you are capable of or what your capacity is in life. And some people are more visual. Some people are more, they hear it. Some people are more feelers, where they feel it from an emotional standpoint. It really does depend on the individual and what works best for them. One thing that I've learned from my guide is that she's not going to give me any shortcuts. So I have to learn how to work through my life. And she's not going to tell me how to cheat. She's not going to tell me how to, she's not going to make everything easy for me. That wasn't the point. It's like when you signed up to participate in a marathon, and you've been, really working towards this one marathon, and you have someone who's like your coach and they're helping you practice and get ready for it. Once it's time to do the marathon, your coach isn't going to drive up in a car and then you hop in and then they're going to drive you to the end or the finish line. It doesn't work that way. That's not why we're here. It's not why they signed up for this. It's not why we signed up for this. There's a lot to be gained from the direct experience of certain conditions and circumstances in our lives. It's a running joke where when you go to a psychic and you ask them about their spirit guide, about your spirit guide, every spirit guide's either a Native American or a warrior, or a goddess, or some sort of like thing that has become mainstream within the spiritual community, where everybody's got a Native American as a guide. I'm like, we have like countless cultures on the planet where why would every guide be Native American? Why would every guide be a warrior? Why, and everybody, when they think of a guide, specifically, they think of old people from like 200, 300, 1,000 years ago. You can have a guide who's someone who was alive in the 70s and they're a hippie. I've met people who have had hippies as guides. I mean, it just depends on the individual and what they're working through. And if someone comes into life, for example, and they are trying to learn how to be less inhibited, because they've always been very controlled in a lot of their lifetimes, and they're trying to kind of work on being more free, being more open, being more free flowy, going with the flow, etc. They're not going to pick someone who is a militant person to be the guide, because that wouldn't serve them. They would probably pick someone who's very free flowing, like a Wiccan, or like someone who was a hippie, or somebody who was more focused on just living in the moment. So really, what your primary goals in life, what you need, you're going to have something that's reflected back in the guide's personality and the guide's background. So everybody has a different guide, and some guides can be young, some guides can be older. It depends on the way they want to reflect themselves to us, because we do get to choose how we're going to be received, how we're going to look, how we're going to feel, how we're going to sound. We get to choose all those things. Most of the time, those choices are made based off of all the lifetimes that we've experienced. I wanted to learn about my guide. I wanted to communicate more with my guide. So I began trying to intentionally communicate with her. And I went through the process of doing meditations, because everything that I read, it came back to the same thing. The best way to learn or to meet your guide is through meditation. So the meditation that I would use was this meditation where you relax your body. Once you relax your body, then you begin to, like, you get into an elevator, and then the elevator goes all the way up to heaven. And then you get out of the elevator, everything looks pristine, pretty, perfect. It's like the perfect version of Earth. That's the way the meditation was. And so it was like a visual meditation experience. But you're intending to meet your guide, right? So you go, and then you go to this area, whether it's a park bench or a room that there's a chair in, whatever you feel comfortable with. You sit down, and then you kind of let your guide just step forward from the light. And at first, it feels like you're making it up. At first, it feels like you're just trying to see it a certain way. And to a certain extent, it is. In the beginning, when you do that meditation, you are going to feel like you're making it up. So just to recap the meditation, because I want to make sure you guys can get the most from this, is you are just going to, like, relax your body, sit down, get comfortable, make sure that you don't have a lot of distractions, get comfortable, relax your body, and then begin going through a visual scenario where you're in your room or into space, and then this elevator just pops up in front of you, or it just appears in front of you, and you're visualizing all this in your mind, right? You're imagining it. The best way to say it is imagine these things. You imagine this elevator opens up in front of you. Your energy self, you get into the elevator, you push the heaven button, and then it takes you all the way to heaven. And then when it arrives, the doors open, and however you want to imagine heaven, whether it's clouds or whether it's like clean, pristine, or the perfect version of Earth, however you think heaven should look like, just visualize it, imagine it in this way. And then find a place to sit down and chill and relax, because you're going to be waiting for your guide to show up. So create a space that you can go and sit down. For me, it would be like a carbon copy of my chair that I sit in, or a bench outside where I can see the beauty of nature. And then once you sit there, then just pretend or imagine that there's a figure coming out of the light, and the figure's getting closer. And as it gets closer, it starts to look like someone. It doesn't have to look like anything specific. Just kind of let it look the way that it's going to automatically look. Don't dismiss it. So if your guide comes forward blonde haired, just embrace and accept that, and just go with it, because over time there will be an evolution of the visual or the appearance of your guide, if they really want you to see them clearly. But you need to it's going to be based around whatever you would perceive, or whatever you would think a guide would look like, right? So for me, when I first did this, my guide, she showed up. She was blonde hair, blue eyed, light skin. She was a white woman. I would say she's probably within her like 35, 40-ish range. And so she came through, and I asked her for a name. And the first name that popped into my head was the one that I went with, even if it sounded nuts or crazy. So at the time, I asked for a name, and the name that I got was Catherine. So I thought, okay. And the reason why I got Catherine was because at that time I had known a woman whose name was Catherine. So her name popped into my head and her popped into my head. That doesn't mean that there's something special about Catherine, or that person that I knew in my life at the time. It just means that my brain was reaching for anything that would help me get as close to the piece of information as possible. So I was using my mental filters to help me understand the information I was experiencing. So for me, it was Catherine. So I'm like, okay, cool. So my guide's name is Catherine. Well, after that, the meditation experience, and the meditation should be less than 30 minutes. I mean, you can honestly do this in 10 minutes. It doesn't take that long to do a meditation. And don't expect fireworks. Don't expect to have to be able to see your guide in front of you. Don't expect all of these like crazy supernatural experiences. Just expect it to be just mental, like thinking. That's it. Because if you build it up and build it up and build it up, that's probably going to block you from being able to meet your guide. And you don't want to block yourself. You want to be able to have an experience that is going to be authentic. And if you're wanting it to show up a certain way, like, oh, my guide, she has to like show up right in front of me. I have to see her with my real eyes, and she has to be surrounded by light, and she has to, no. Like, don't put a bunch of walls in front of it, because you're going to keep yourself from having a direct experience. So just do the meditation, let it kind of progress the way it's going to progress, follow those basic steps, and then you will start to get closer to meeting your guide. Now, if you are, in visualizing, you're in heaven and you're waiting there for your guide to show up, and you feel like no one shows up from the light, or nothing really kind of comes forward, there's probably two reasons why. Either because you are trying to control how you will experience it, whether you're afraid of experiencing it, or whether you have to have it look a certain way, or you are trying to, you're in fear, and your fear of losing control is part. It's a control issue. That's what it is. It's a control issue all around. But there's either fear, or it's you trying to have it be a certain way, and you kind of just have to let it be. Just let it be however it's going to show up. Even if it's like very subtle and it's not solid, it's not like so intense. It's just very like subtle and almost like a dream. Like one minute you're experiencing one thing, the next minute it just like changes. That's okay. You're allowed to have those experiences. But that's kind of the way of getting to know your guide. So your first experience with your guide isn't going to be the most accurate. It's just going to be your brain, your mind's way of trying to help you understand the energy. After that, start having conversations with your guide, because even if, whether that's your guide's exact name or not, doesn't matter. You're addressing the energy, you're addressing your guide. Your guide's not stupid. They're going through the process with you. So they're going to be able to help you to get clarity on some of the things that you might be a little confused on. That's exactly what happened with me. I thought my guide's name was Catherine. And after that meditation, I was like, cool. So I was talking to Catherine. I was like, hey, Catherine. I called her Cat for short. Hey, Catherine this, hey, Catherine that, or whatever. Because I was working on building more of so you kind of have to talk to them like they're imaginary friends, and people are going to think you're crazy, because if you talk to your guide when you're in front of other people, they're not going to know what the hell you're talking or doing. I would suggest you talk to your guide through a journal format, because it's easier if you just address it as kind of like a letter. So I would just write out a letter and ask them about some things, or, ask them questions. They love questions because they'll find a way to get the answers to you. They may not show up in that moment and say, hey, I got your memo, so let me just explain this to you, because you obviously want to know this. It will not happen that easily, because they still have to maintain a vibration on a higher level, and we're in physical form. So it's hard for them to kind of materialize unless it's really something that's supposed to happen or meant to happen because of divine plan. But most cases, it's just going to be this subtle understanding of your guide, and then write letters to them and just talk to them, whether you want to talk to them about your life stuff or you want to ask them for help with certain issues. But it just depends. So for me, I was talking to Catherine, and I was getting to know Catherine in my own way. And I was still meditating. I was still having regular meditation sessions where I would take myself to this meeting place and sit there and meet with my guide. And even if nothing was spoken about or conversed, I just sitting there with my guide helped me to feel like I was getting to know my guide better. Then one morning, Catherine decided to pay me a visit and really let me know that she was really connected and that she was with me. So in this morning that I got a chance to meet Catherine, she had something she needed to say to me. So I was asleep. I remember sleeping. I was asleep, and I woke up. And as I was waking up, I heard in my head, it's the same kind of voice that I heard when the kitchen fire stuff happened, but this is a little different. So I heard in my mind when I woke up, my name is not Catherine, it's Kathleen. And it was kind of like as a matter, like very matter of fact in the way that it was coming across, and it had a little attitude too. And I was like, "What?" And I was a little, I thought it was funny, and I was entertained by the response that she gave me. But she was very clear. She's like, "My name isn't Catherine, it's Kathleen." So she was trying to correct me, and she sure corrected me for sure. So after that, I'm like, "Oh, sorry, Kathleen, Kathleen, Kathleen." I'd been calling her Catherine for I think for weeks or months at that point, and then she finally corrected me and said, "No, no, no, baby, no, 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 baby boy, my name is not Catherine, it's Kathleen." So after that, I called her Kathleen, and I've been calling her Kathleen ever since.